So I've got to tell you about one of my most crazy adventures that I've ever been on. I was reading about this place called the Baliem Valley. I was actually learning about it in anthropology, and they were talking about how there was this place which was completely hidden from the rest of the world. Nobody knew about it. Nobody even knew it existed until in 1938. Somebody discovered it when I think they were flying over it, and they spotted it, and they went down to explore, and they found people which were living completely separated from the rest of the world, and untouched, still living in very, very primitive ways, and very, some people relate it to sort of Stone Age sort of times. Since then, it wasn't until quite a few years later that people actually started to arrive there, more from the Western world, and it's gradually been opened up to tourism and modern things. It's located in West Papua, which is now being run by Indonesia, and it's fascinating. So I'm going to get to the story. I went there. I had very simple maps, and I didn't know that much about it. And I'd read something in A Lonely Planet about some walking that you could do in the area.
Okay, here we are, just setting off on my holiday. Going to go trekking, which is pretty exciting. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous. It's a bit strange pulling out a camera in a place like this, but here I am in Wamena, walking up in the Baliem Valley. I've got a very crude tourist map, which I got off a nice Japanese guy who works at an internet cafe. The tourist information centre wasn't all that helpful, but most people get a guide when they're here, and then they go up in the mountains. But I got fed up with microphone might not have been working. I got fed up with waiting for a guide, so here I am. I'm going up into the Baliem Valley on my own, and I'll find a guide once things get a little bit more tricky. But I'm just finding my way to the public transport sort of area. Check out the views before we even leave the town. Those mountains, man. What is your name? Your name? It's okay. English is probably about as good as my Papuan or whatever. They've got a few hundred languages here. But so we're in the Dali people area, and we're going to the Yali, not to be confused with the Lani.
And I went in there, and it was a nightmare. My plan was to do a circuit up in the mountains, and just go up and explore. And I really didn't know where I was going to be going. So I took these simple maps, and I took my food, and I was told, look, just bring the staples, but make sure you bring some salt, because the food that they eat is very simple. And so I went up in the mountains with my salt and my rice for emergencies, and I started walking up into the hills.
You can see there's maybe some fires going on over there, preparing the land. This is the beautiful surroundings of Hautugi. It's very developed. It's had some mission work done to it. I've actually got quite a nice room. Well, I mean, there's no bedding or anything, but it's got walls. I'm not staying in whatever those circle huts are called. I'll get some more information on that later. We've got fresh water over there, and feeling good.
And it wasn't long before I started to feel quite sick because of the altitude, and also just absolutely exhausted. I'm renowned for making trips way too long, planning on walking way too far and never completing it, and this was no exception. I spent the first couple of days walking about 12-hour days, and was starting to walk into some really more and more sort of bizarre villages. People were living in huts where there were fires inside. Men would sleep in one hut, women would sleep in another.
Just at Yoga Sam, cooking some lunch, got some rice on the go. These guys are very hungry. Yeah. They're wondering what the hell I'm doing. But yeah, I'm very hungry. In fact, I feel like I'm going to vomit. But I think I've worked out the rest of my trip, so hopefully I'm just building my strength, and the rest of the days will be a bit easier. Look at these kids. I was, for the last kilometre or so of my journey, these guys accompanied me. It's great.
And they were inviting me into these huts to sleep. At first I had my tent set up, and every time I'd open up my tent, it was just surrounded by people all looking at me, staring at me, and it was pretty nuts. Like, I was as interested in them as they were of me. A lot of the women were undressed, a lot of the men were undressed. They were wearing gourds upon their like dried out gourds upon their penises, and yeah, it was like people were just totally unfazed. There was one time I stopped to use the toilet while I was on the walk. So it had been a while. Decided to squat and use the bathroom, and out of nowhere this guy comes along and he starts staring at me, and he's just like, "What are you doing?" And I'm just like, "Oh, like we couldn't speak the same language." And he was just like, "Well, like it's like I can go to the toilet," indicated what I was doing, and he was watching me doing it and seemed rather unfazed. But what he was fazed about was the fact that was some sort of planting land. I had no idea, I couldn't see, but there was obviously a place where I was supposed to go, and there was a place where I wasn't supposed to go. And so anyway, that was sort of bizarre. I mean, it wasn't fazed about the fact that I was taking a crap, but he was fazed about the fact that I was pooping in his garden. So anyway, kept on walking. After a couple of 12-hour days, I was absolutely exhausted. At this stage, kids which were about 12 years old just started to run past me, like totally unfazed by the altitude, totally unfazed by the fact they were carrying 20 kg sacks of rice on their shoulders. In fact, there was grandmas which were passing me as well, and they were walking across these little bridges made out of trees and just bouncing across them, where I had to like sit down and just sort of slowly sidle myself across these things over like massive drops over rivers and things. And we started to walk up and up into the hills, and these kids they just started singing to me to encourage me to keep walking, and I was just shot. They would run up ahead of me and light all these fires and like sing songs, and then eventually there was this one time where it got to be about 6 in the evening, and I was so tired. We finally made it to this hut, which was just like one of these sort of huts made out of sticks, and it started to get really cold. All I could do was just get inside of my sleeping bag and just huddle. And they lit a fire, and we sat around the fire. These guys had no sleeping bags. They had no cooking pots. They were cooking rice inside of plastic Coke bottles. And they were just totally unfazed. And I was freezing cold, like shivering, hiding up beside the fire. And it was just crazy. So I spent the night inside of this hut with this grandma, this baby which the grandma was carrying, and about 3 of these guys.
So I've just hiked up a mountain, which was incredibly difficult. I ended up skipping a day, doing a 2-day walk in 1 day, so it was really quite epic. And when I got to the top of this hill, I was just like, I cannot go any further. I had to go further. So this is the nearest place that I found. The shelter. These guys very kindly led me here. Hey guys. Hi. These people. They've come from the same place as I have today. Except they're in BFC and they're carrying 15 kgs of rice on their heads. So, similar sort of shoes, except they're a lot better. They're a lot better off than I am. Well, I'm a lot worse off, is what I'm trying to say. But I'll give you a quick tour of the place where I'll be staying tonight. It's sort of interesting. Hey, hold on. Sweet, it looks warm to me. God. It's awesome, eh? Thank you.
At one stage, the grandma saw that I was just like absolutely exhausted and couldn't move, and she unwraps this little parcel which was wrapped inside of leather and pulls out this little cube of pig fat, and she was just like, yep, looked at me just like, this is my prized possession here. And she cuts it in half and gives me half the thing of pig fat. And I was like, oh God, like, I don't want to eat straight pig fat, but I was really hungry. So I was just like, oh, cool, thank you very much. And they were so kind to me. And the next day, like, if I wasn't there, they wouldn't have stopped at that hut. They would have been able to make it to where we were going the next day. The next day it was about another 6 hours, and we got up to this place, and like it was really remote now. There was children there which as soon as they saw me, they just started crying because I was the first white person that these kids had ever seen. Like it was pretty crazy. And anyway, like we're walking through this place, and by this stage, I must have been about 4 or 5 days in. I'm absolutely exhausted. I've decided I cannot walk any further. And I was going to wait for the next plane to come into the town. The planes only come every 2 weeks to come and pick people up. And the runway was insane. Like, I'll get to the runway in a second. So I'm parked up in this place, and by this stage I cannot eat any of the food that they're offering me. It was just like the thought of eating another kumara or another bit of plain rice with salt on it. I just, I hate to sound precious, but I was so tired and just so sick of this food. And then they were like, okay, cool, we see what's going on here. You're tired and sick of the food. So they got this red berry and they cut it off the tree, and they're like, oh, we'll make you something really nice. And they got all these red berries, and they started mixing up this potion with all of these red berries. And this stuff that they made was this red, sticky, oily stuff. It was so bizarre. And they gave it to me. They're like, we know you're sick of eating kumara. Here, eat this. And then I tasted it, and I was just like, oh my God, this is revolting. It was like eating oil straight from a car. It was so strange, but it had a lot of energy in it, and I did my best to eat as much as I could. But so anyway, they were being so kind to me, but just everything that they were doing just was so foreign to me, and it was so difficult. And so I stayed in this village, and it took me about 3 days to recover. And I just lay in this hut, just staring up at the roof, playing Nokia Snake on my Nokia cell phone, staring up at the roof, just thinking, oh my God, when's this plane going to arrive? And after 3 days, the plane arrived, which was amazing timing. But I still didn't know if there's going to be room on the plane to take me back, because obviously pregnant women, sick people, like people that have paid for tickets, they're all going to get priority. They had no phones, no radios or anything, so they couldn't, there was no electricity, there was no nothing. And when these birds of the sky arrive, like when these planes arrive, the whole village just comes out and surrounds the plane, because they often will be unloading supplies, and it's just a massive celebration. Luckily enough, they were able to put me onto this plane. The runway was like maybe 300 meters long, and it was right in the middle of a valley surrounded by mountains. And at the end of the runway there was this ramp which went right up, almost like almost vertical, and the plane would, when it came into land, it would go flying in right up, and then right up this ramp, and then just park up on the top. And then when I got on the plane and they were flying me out of there, it was the most terrifying thing again, because they turned the plane around, put it in full acceleration, handbrake on, and then boom, took the handbrake off, and we went down the ramp, flying down the runway. And I'm like, are we going to take off? Are we going to take off? Are we going to take off? Pulls back the stick, and we lift off the ground, and we're going up, and like I'm looking straight at the mountain ahead of us, and he just keeps pulling back on the stick, and the plane's going, whoa, and we turn and we clear the mountain, and we fly out of there. And I was just so thankful and just so amazed, and just I couldn't believe what I got myself into.
I think it's going to be a beautiful flight back to Waimea.
And if it wasn't for those people that helped me along the trail, I probably would have been lost, and I would have been very hungry, and I just don't know if I would have made it out. So yeah, that was my trip to West Papua, to the Baliem Valley. Hope you enjoy these photos.